to explore the Hebrew roots of your Christian faith? Then grab your Bible and let's get started.
Shalom. This is another chapter that I would recommend you listen to the titles inside the Bible for chapter 30 of Genesis. Some of your Bibles may say Jacob tricks Laban. Some might say Jacob flocks increase. Some Bibles even say Jacob prospers. So the question is, depending on the Bible, which one would you believe? Which one would you receive? Which title? Titles are all commentary. They're someone else's perception, someone else's idea, someone else's thoughts. This is why we need to study the Bible for ourselves. Welcome to Reconcile, the kingdom where we're working towards becoming the harmony of the whole word of truth. My name is Patrice Robinson, and I greatly appreciate every last one of you who join me on this live premiere and those who will be joining me on the replay. Believe me, every last one of you are greatly appreciated. So if you're here visiting me for the first time, I welcome you. And of course, if this is your 50th, 300th time, I still welcome you. I'm hoping that you are ready to join this family who does not mind searching the scriptures, a family who does not mind challenging the religious teachings that we have been receiving for hundreds of years, a family that is committed as a student of the Bible. And of course, it is really easy to join this family because it is totally free. You just hit that subscribe button below and that bell. The bell is to let you know when I'm live, when there's announcements, and when there are updates. That's the purpose of the bell. Now, that is not the only way that you can support this ministry. There's other ways that you can support this ministry. You can easily comment and share. Right now, you have the opportunity to share this live premiere link to friends and family. Because if you are learning something, they can learn something too. Give me a thumbs up. Follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, Spotify, YouTube, and YouTube podcasts. And don't forget, we now have an online digital shop that you can shop. And I have the love jar where you can donate. All of this information that we just talked about is in the description box below so that you can look around and click on those and use that. So I'm hoping that you also have an opportunity to purchase your Judges workbook. We just completed the introduction of Judges last week at 10 o'clock a.m. on Saturday. And yes, we will be in Judges chapter 1 coming up. I think that's June the 10th is coming up on Saturday. And I have already started working on mine. So I'll be sharing my 5 W's. And of course, I'll be sharing my introduction on Saturday at 10 o'clock a.m. So you still have time to purchase your workbook. Now, the workbook, you have another option. You can just buy the 2 sheets, and that's $1.99. So you have options to choose of what you may need and what's best for you and your family. So that is available to you. So now I hope that you remember at the end of this teaching that you most definitely, I see my grandson is sharing his comments on here. Thank you. I appreciate you and I love you too, sweetheart. But I thank you for all of you who are joining me today, and I hope that you have your Bibles before you. Now, don't forget, at the end of this teaching, you have an opportunity to ask questions clearly about what we are presenting on today. You have time to ask questions even on the replay because I answer those questions too. No questions are ignored. And if you are, there are some times I get questions that are in a different language. Sometimes it's hard to understand those questions. So most definitely see if we can translate it in English so I can address those questions. Now, I hope you have your Genesis worksheet or workbook that we'll be working through on today, in your Bible and your writing utensils, everything that you need on today's Bible study, because we're on Genesis chapter 30. But before we go to Genesis chapter 30, I actually am going to share my notes from last week on Genesis 29, just like I did last week for 28. I'm going to share those because those are the key points. Those are the recaps that we always talk about. So, I normally don't put titles in my teachings. I really do that. But if I did put a title for last week, again, I would call it Jacob's Culture Shock, because truly he got a culture shock of some lifestyle that is totally different from what he was raised from with Isaac and Rebekah. So he goes to Laban, which is Rebekah's brother, and he realized they handle the flock different. The way they have them get water and food, all those type of things are different. Then there is a different way to engage. So the rules of engagement is totally different from what he was under his parents. The rules of engagement is so different that Jacob ended up marrying two women and two sisters, Leah and Rachel. Now, in Genesis chapter 29, Leah actually began having children. So we have four sons. We have Reuben, which is the firstborn after my affliction. Simeon, because Yehovah heard that she was hated. Levi, she believed her husband would join her. And four praises Yehovah for Judah. Unfortunately, in Genesis 29, Rachel is barren. But I want to point your eyes to questions. So I have actually one question, but it's two people that address. So I put it as two questions. One, why didn't Rebecca educate Jacob about her family's culture? I'm pretty sure Rebecca knew there was the elder had to get married for the first one, and she might not have known how many children that Laban had, but that is kind of a culture, something that you would remember. And then remember that Jacob was there for a whole total month. He'd already kissed Rachel, but Rachel never mentioned anything to Jacob about that the sister Leah had to get married first before they can engage. So that is the questions that I have. And of course, you see the word studies we went through last week and the cross reference, the scriptures we talked about. And I have my little red dots on some of the insights, some of the other things that came to my mind. So I'm gonna leave this up for a while so that you can take a look at that. But we are in Genesis chapter 30, and we are going to go straight to it. And Rachel saw that she was that, and when Rachel saw that she bare Jacob no children, Rachel envied her sister and said unto Jacob, give me children, or else I die. And Jacob's anger was kindled against Rachel, and he said, Am I in God's stead? In other words, I'm in God's position, who hath withheld from thee the fruit of the womb. And she said, behold, my maid Bilhah, go into her, and she shall bear upon my knees, that I may also have children by her. And she gave him Bilhah, her handmaid, to wife, and Jacob went unto her. And Bilhah conceived and bare Jacob a son. And Rachel said, God hath judged me, hath also heard my voice, hath given me a son. Therefore called she his name Dan. And Bilhah, Rachel's maid, conceived again and bare Jacob a second son. And Rachel said, with great wrestling have I wrestled with my sister, and I prevailed. And she called his name Naphtali. So what we see in this passage, there's actually a lot that's going on in this passage. First, Rachel goes to her husband. I'm not sure what she expected from him, what she thought he was going to say. You know, I'm not for sure what she expected. But for me, as a person who's reading this today, I would have expected Jacob to say to Rachel, look, I'm going to go before Yehovah for you, and I'm going to ask him to open your womb. After all, we do know that that is what Isaac did for Rebekah. So that's what I was kind of expecting to read about, but we don't see or read that Jacob done that for Rachel. So instead of her, maybe even praying or Jacob praying, Rebecca resulted into the same thing that Sarah did, giving her handmaid to Jacob as Sarah gave Hagar to Abraham. And we know how that turned out. So again, we struggle with leaning on our understanding and not acknowledging him all our ways. But all of this, Jacob now has 6 children and two firstborns. So we have Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Dan, and Naphtali. And the firstborns are Reuben and Dan, 2 firstborn. Verse number 9 from Genesis 30. When Leah saw that she had left bearing, meaning she's not having any more children at this moment, she took Zilpah, her maid, and gave Jacob to wife. And Zilpah, Leah's maid, bare Jacob a son. And Leah said, a troop cometh, and she called his name Gad. And Zilpah, Leah's maid, bare Jacob a second son. And Leah said, happy am I, for the daughters will call me blessed. And she called his name Asher. So what we have is Leah following suit of the same thing that Rachel did and gave her handmaid Zilpah to Jacob. And now what we have is a total of 8 children, 8 sons. As a matter of fact, he has a total of 8 sons. So most definitely his family is growing. 8 sons and 3 firstborn. So let's identify the firstborn. It is Gad, Dan, and Reuben. So those are the firstborn sons that we have so far. Now, we are going to read on, and we are on verse 14. And Reuben went in the days of wheat harvest and found mandrakes in the field and brought them unto his mother Leah. Then Rachel said to Leah, give me, I pray thee, of thy son's mandrakes. And she said unto her, it is a small matter that thou hast taken my husband. Now, you taking my husband. This is what Leah is saying to Rachel. And wouldst thou take away my son's mandrakes also? So you're taking something else from me? And Rachel said, therefore he shall lie with thee tonight for thy son's mandrakes. And Jacob came out of the field in the evening, and Leah went out to meet him and said, thou must come unto me, for surely I have hired thee with my son's mandrakes. And he lay with her that night. And Elohim hearkened unto Leah, and she conceived and bare Jacob the 5th son. And Leah said, Elohim hath given me my hire, because I have given my maiden to my husband. And she called his name Issachar. And Leah conceived and bare Jacob a 6th son. And Leah said, Elohim hath endued me in good dowry. Now will my husband dwell with me, because I have borne him 6 sons. And she called his name Zebulun. And afterwards she bare a daughter and called her name Dinah. So Leah, of course, is still in the wrong spot when it comes to her sister Rachel, because she feels like Rachel has taken her husband. This is Leah's perception, because Leah is the elder, so she is supposed to marry. And we're not supposed to be marrying the same man. So you took my husband, and now you're trying to take my son's mandrake. So she's still not in a good spot at this moment. And technically, unfortunately, it wasn't Leah that he wanted to marry. He wanted to marry Rachel. So this is kind of Laban's doing and not Rachel's doing. But no one told Jacob in the first place on how what the rules are for engagement. So now we have the wheat harvest is when Reuben went and got the mandrake's fruit. And of course, we know in the future what happens during the wheat harvest, which we just finished that annual feast. Now, these mandrakes, they must be a fruit, a type of natural fruit medicine that aids into a woman's fertility for her womb. And the only reason why I say this is because Jacob and the four women, Leah, Rachel, Bilhah, and Zilpah, they're not having performance problems. They're having womb problems. The wombs are not being fruitful at times. And so we still have Rachel having problems in this area. So all the other women then had natural born births, except for Rachel. So the next verse, Leah goes to Jacob and says that she hired him for the night, which makes me think that they had a schedule on who, when, and what night that someone's going to be with Jacob, who's going to lie with him, because, why would she say, I hired you for the night? So Leah has two more sons and one daughter. So that gives us 10 sons, one daughter, for a total of 11 children that Jacob has right now. These 11 children that he has right now. We still with the three firstborn, which is Dan, Gad, and Reuben. We just have more sons and one daughter. Verse 22 of Genesis 30. And Elohim remembered Rachel. And Elohim hearkened to her and opened her womb, and she conceived and bare a son. And she said, Elohim hath taken away my reproach. And she called his name Joseph, and said, Yehovah shall add to me another son. So Rachel has used these mandrakes, and it sounds like she's also prayed to Yehovah that her womb would be open, and her womb was open, and now we have 11 sons. 11 sons and 4 firstborn, which includes Joseph. That is a lot of firstborns. Verse 25. And it came to pass when Rachel had born Joseph that Jacob said unto Laban, send me away, that I may go into my own place, to my country. Give me my wives, my children, for whom I serve thee, and let me go, for thou knowest my service, which I have done thee. And Laban said unto him, I pray thee, if I have found favor in their eyes, this is Laban speaking, tarry, wait. For I have learned by experience that Yehovah hath blessed me for thy sake. So Laban is now recognizing that he has been profiting, being blessed, because Yehovah is with Jacob. So he's acknowledging that I'm blessed because you don't, wait, you don't need to go anywhere. So he was not looking for him to go anywhere. So verse 28, and he said, appoint me thou wages, and I will give it. Now we know what happened last time he asked this question. Verse 29, and he said unto him, thou knowest I have served thee, and how thy cattle was with me. For it was a little which thou hadst before I came, and is now increased into a multitude. And Yehovah have blessed thee since my coming. And now, when shall I provide for my own house also? So Jacob recognized that Laban has been blessed because he was wealthy, but he was not as wealthy as he is now that Jacob have arrived. So there has been most definitely an increase. There most definitely has been a multitude profit that Laban has received. And now Jacob has his family is growing, so he wants to provide for his own family. He wants to go into his own country. Because remember, Rebecca kind of thought he was going to be away for a little short time. This is about 14 years later, 14 and maybe some change later, and he is ready to leave. And so we are now on verse 31. And he said, "What should I give thee?" And Jacob said, "Thou should not give me anything if thou will do this thing for me." This is the only thing that he wants. I think I put the wrong thing. The only thing that he wants, "I will again feed and keep thy flock." So let's see what he's asking for. "I will pass through all thy flock today, remove from thence all the speckled and spotted cattle, and all the brown cattle among the sheep, and the spotted and speckled among the goats. Of such shall be my hire." So he is saying his price, not that it has to be this special, the good flock. He asking for something that's spotted. Verse 33. "So shall my righteousness answer for me in time to come, when it shall come for my hire before thy face. Everyone that is not speckled and spotted among the goats, and brown among the sheep, but shall be counted stolen with me." So anything that's not speckled or spotted, that you find among my sheep and goats, that means I stole it. And Laban said, "Behold, I would it might be according to thy word." So Joseph doesn't really want Laban to say that he caused him to be rich. And we had the same issue with Abraham. It wasn't an issue, but Abraham did the same request with the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah, and of the kings that he went and saved with Lot and his family. He didn't want them to say that they made him rich. And Laban and Jacob is saying the same thing to Laban. I don't want you to say that I'm rich, but I'll take all the spotted and the brown ones, the ones that people don't want. I take that. So he was negotiating his wage. I would call it a wage, but it's something that people normally don't want. And so he said, "I will take those things." And Laban, it seems like Jacob probably learned something about being with Laban so long, knowing that, his strategies, "I don't want anything from you. Just give me all the no goods." There's something up your sleeve if I ask something for good. So give me all the no goods, all the spotted and speckled that people don't want. I take those type of things. So Laban agrees with this agreement. Jacob would get all the flock that is speckled, spotted, brown, sheep, he goats, and all those type of things. He would get those things. But let's see what Laban does. Verse 35. "And he being Laban, removed that day the he goats that was ring straight and spotted, and all the she goats that were speckled and spotted, and everyone that had some white in it, and all the brown among the sheep, and he gave them to the hand of his sons." So Laban took what he agreed that Jacob would get and gave it to his own sons, his biological sons, and set 3 days' journey between himself and Jacob. he gave it to his sons instead of Jacob. And Jacob feed the rest of Laban's flocks. Do we see that Laban is still doing his trickery, doing his deceit, and trying to make Jacob stay because he recognized how he is profiting off of Jacob? Um, so Jacob is set up for failure, you would think, because he separated them 3 days ahead. So he took everything he agreed with, went through it, and gave it to his sons and said 3 days ahead. So Jacob will have no way of being able to achieve getting what he wanted, which is something that people wouldn't want. That they wouldn't want the speckle, the spot, the brown ones, and all those type of things. So let's see, how Jacob gonna handle the situation. So far, Jacob's not yelling, screaming, and going off or confronting Laban. So let's see what happens. Verse number 37. And Jacob took him rods of green poplar and of hazel and chestnut tree, and peeled white stripes in them, and made the white appear which was in the rods. And he set the rods, and he had peeled before the flocks in the gutters, in the watering troughs, when the flocks came to drink, that they should conceive when they came to drink. And the flocks conceived before the rods, and brought forth cattle ring-streaked, speckled, and spotted. And Jacob did separate the lambs, set the faces of the flocks toward the ring-streaked, and all the brown of the flock of Laban, and he put his own flocks by themselves, and put them not into Laban's cattle. And it came to pass, whensoever the stronger cattle did conceive, that Jacob laid the rods before the eyes of the cattle in the gutters, that they might conceive among the rods. But when the cattle were feeble, he put them not in, so the feeble were Laban's, and the stronger Jacob's. And the man increased exceedingly, and had much cattle, and maidservants, and manservants, and camels, and asses. Do we see that Jacob has learned from Laban's issues on how to get around Laban? Not only did he learn, his strategies, that he's not going to be up to any good, Jacob learned about the field. Not only did he learn about the field, he learned the mating cycle of the sheeps and the goats and things like that. So he learned a lot in the midst of, he had no choice. It's like throw him to the wolves when they sent him to Laban. So Laban had no idea who he was fighting against, because Laban was actually fighting against Yehovah and not Jacob. So what do you think Jacob got this idea about these spotted, speckled, brown, he goats and she goats? Now, that is something that we are going to cover next week. Where did this come from? So I'm hoping that you are learning something. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button before you leave. Leave me a comment. Give me a thumbs up. Share with your loved ones, your friends, as we continue on this journey. And don't forget to join me on Saturday at 10 o'clock a.m. We are in, again, the book of Judges, and we will be covering chapter 1 on Saturday. As always, man does not live by bread alone, but every word that proceeds out of the mouth of Yehovah. I pray that you have a blessed rest of the week, and thank you for joining me on today.